Tonight, a plan from the Saskatchewan Health Authority to deal with overcrowding in Regina hospitals. Also,
a thrill for that young man and everybody back in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan.
Historically, Saskatchewan's known for churning out high-caliber hockey players, but that reputation is changing. Plus, as we approach a brown Christmas, we look back on a weird weather year full of extremes.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Thursday, December 21st, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening and thank you for watching. The Saskatchewan Health Authority says it has a new plan to deal with overcrowding in Regina hospitals. That plan is to add more staff to Regina hospitals over the next 3 months. This comes one day after the NDP exposed a memo from a Regina fire inspector. It warned that patients receiving care in hallways at the General and Pasquale hospitals were causing fire code violations.
We are looking at different ways in order to be able to ensure that we meet the fire code and ensure a safe environment. And that would include working with our EMS providers to look at different options. So we're still working through what some of those more detailed actions might be, but we are very committed to collaborating with the fire department as we always have.
This is the second time the SHA has promised to deal with overcrowding. Last month, plans were shared to deal with a similar issue in Saskatoon. The SHA says it will work with the Ministry of Health to make sure the changes take place. Saskatchewan's Indigenous incarceration rates are double that of the national average. The NDP says it's a sign the government is failing Indigenous women. The Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations says no solutions are being brought forward.
We need to take a look at these what's happening when our people are trying to reintegrate into community, because there are a lack of housing, there's a lack of mental health therapy or addiction services in this province. And we see other provinces taking action, and I think we need to also do the same thing. We need to implement treatment centers, and we also need to have safe access to housing.
The Pine Grove Women's Correctional Centre in Prince Albert has a capacity of 160 inmates, but back in July, the NDP says the jail housed roughly 100 more on top of that number. Regina Public Library is expanding help for anyone who needs a person to talk to. Free walk-in counseling sessions are now being offered at 4 library branches. The Central Branch has been doing this successfully for a year. The hour-long sessions are run by Family Service Regina.
It's also been wonderful because people who are here to pick up a couple books or attend a program might discover this service and say, hey, this is a great resource. I might come back next week and do it. So it's been a really great partnership, and I think it's been taking up. This is why we're expanding it. There's a need, and we're happy to fill it.
You don't need a library card to access a counseling session. You can book in advance or just walk in. The Albert, Regent Place, Glen Elm, and Central libraries are all offering the service. Other branches may be added if demand continues to grow. The City of Regina showed off its new temporary compost site today. This after the RM of Edenwald backed out of the site plan after community backlash. More than 4,500 tons of food waste have been collected in green bins this fall. It ends up here at this section of the Regina landfill. The bags are opened up and hand-checked for plastic and other non-organic material, and it starts getting processed. The material is then sprayed with clean water and mixed with air to begin composting. Then Gore-Tex fabric keeps it clean.
Waterproof but breathable, and so what that does is contain all the moisture inside the pile, which we need to keep composting, and that gets the pile very hot. So we're going to show you that those piles are at about 80 degrees Celsius, and then from there we take the material and we move it into curing. And that's where it's continually flipped with an excavator, and at that point it's no longer a vector attractant, so there's no birds on it, there's no mosquitoes and no weed seeds or any type of pathogens.
Oseo says this technology helps to eliminate most odor from the compost. It's hoped the city will find a more permanent site within a year. There are fewer NHL players coming out of Saskatchewan these days, and that's getting attention in a province that's always prided itself on churning out high-level hockey players. Bonnie Allen reports.
Here's a loose puck. Everly scores!
Jordan Eberle is one of 20 players in the NHL this season who hail from Saskatchewan. But that's far fewer than just over a decade ago when 57 NHL players came from the Prairie Province.
Gordie Howe with a second goal of the night.
And going back in history, Saskatchewan has always punched well above its weight in sending players to the show. So why the decline? Hockey players at this Saskatoon rink have their theories.
I think it's a big money thing. Like, there's a lot more money down in the U.S. It's simple as that.
19-year-old Jet Strang says it's becoming more difficult for Canadians to dominate as the Americans pump more money into hockey. His friends have set their sights on other goals.
I think even for where I'm playing, most of the guys are like really putting their heads towards school and stuff like that, less towards the rink. And I think that's also got to do with it. Just a lot less guys actually going towards, I'm going to the show. It's just a lot of what am I going to do with my life after this, focusing more on the books.
The United States has a much greater population than Canada, and the game of hockey is becoming a much bigger deal in the United States than it used to be.
Randy Boswell has been crunching the numbers. The journalism professor says as Americans take up more NHL spots, there's less room for Canadians.
The state of Minnesota is producing more NHL players right now than either Alberta or Quebec. So it tells you something that, there's significant changes underway.
Back at the rink, families say playing hockey is already expensive, and pursuing elite hockey is unaffordable for most.
Living in Saskatchewan, the travel costs are significant.
We were just at the sports store before we came here and looking at sticks for $400, $430, so.
But this 11-year-old says he won't give up.
My big dream is the NHL.
And despite the decline, Saskatchewan is still the #1 producer of NHL talent per capita in North America. But for how much longer is the question. Bonnie Allen, CBC News, Swift Current.
2023 has been a year of weather extremes around the world and in our own backyard. So much has happened, you may have forgotten about it. Ethan Williams takes us on a look back and ahead to what's to come in 2024.
We started 2023 in a literal fog. Our weather basically came to a standstill, and that created day after day of misty skies. And it happened in a winter that was the last gasp for La Nina, a weather pattern that sees Pacific Ocean temperatures drop below normal, creating colder and sometimes wetter winters on the prairies. That meant March was a whopping 5.5 to 8 degrees colder than normal through the province. It was also the driest March on record for Regina and Yorkton, and close to the driest for many other places, not exactly living up to La Nina's expectations. That all changed in April. A late-season snowstorm dumped nearly 60 centimeters of snow on southeastern Saskatchewan. But the cold and snow didn't last. Temperatures soared to 30 degrees in early May, and soon after, early season forest fires gripped the province's north. It would become a year that saw the most hectares of land burned by fires in the province and the most hours of smoke recorded in at least 4 locations, including Regina and Saskatoon. One fire researcher says next year's fire season could be a repeat on the prairies if the dry and warm weather continues.
This does remind me of 1997, and in Alberta, 1997, what followed was a very active fire season in 1998.
The dry conditions this year continued into summer, making an already bad drought situation worse. More than 50 rural municipalities declared agricultural disasters because of drought and grasshoppers. But outside of the hardest hit areas, producers say it actually turned out to be an average harvest.
Obviously, the southwestern portion of the province, Swift and South there, they were extremely dry, extremely short of grass and feed for cattle. And then we have pockets up by Yorkton that had a hard time getting their crop off because they got a rain shower every day.
The lack of moisture given off by growing crops also prevented thunderstorms from developing. Only one tornado struck the province this year as a result, the lowest yearly count since records began. Leaving storm chasers here like Jenny Hagen heading to Alberta to see storms.
It's a little bit, frustrating from a photography point of view. We want to be able to capture that stuff. But it is a bonus for, your farmers and stuff like that, that the damage isn't happening.
And we've now gone from La Nina to its opposite pattern, El Nino. That's meant a warm and dry fall, with many communities poised to have a Christmas with little to no snow. All this says 2023 is well on track to be the hottest year on record globally. And with El Nino expected to continue and climate change effects being felt around the world, some forecasters are concerned that means little relief for heat and drought in 2024. Ethan Williams, CBC News, Regina.
Well, speaking of weather, what a weird first day of winter. Balmy temperatures and hardly any snow on the ground. Inflatable characters like Olaf might be the only snowmen you see for a while, at least in the south. Ethan will have your forecast after the break. Stay with us.
This weather update is brought to you by Titan Automotive, proud member of the Capital Automotive Group.
Welcome back. Our weather specialist, Ethan Williams, joins me now. Happy first day of spring.
Yeah, it's really kind of a pick your season sort of a day, isn't it? It's very strange.
It is so weird.
Yeah, so strange. But yeah, I've done some digging, some number crunching for you here, and we've taken a look back at Regina just kind of within the last 25 years here in terms of the first day of winter. December 21st is the date I'm using. And this is officially the warmest first day of winter that we've had in 25 years in Regina. We got to 4.3 degrees. The coldest in that same period of time, you do not have to go very far back. Just 1 year ago today, it was minus 27.2 in the Queen City. Saskatoon, the period of record here is from 2008 to now, and the warmest actually in 2018. You hit 2.5 degrees. It was even colder in 2008 on the first day of winter when it was minus 27. We are a far cry from that no matter where you are through the province. You don't need me to tell you that these are above seasonal conditions for a lot of us, especially in south and central Saskatchewan. For the southwest, places like Maple Creek, yesterday we saw conditions getting upwards of 15 degrees. Didn't quite get that warm today, but still above zero for many locations. We've dropped just below that here as we're heading into the evening hours. But a clear day. The snow and the clouds mostly clearing out of northern Saskatchewan. A little bit of that building back in now, but for the southern half of the province, a lot of us looking at sunny conditions and clear skies heading into tonight. A bit of fog, though, is possible through much of south and central. Through the north, the cloud cover builds back in a little bit as the system moves to our north. The best chance for any snowfall over the next few days comes conveniently on Christmas Eve, and that is possibly a little bit in southeastern Saskatchewan, just skirting south of Regina, maybe into the Estevan area. That quickly moves out, though, for Christmas Day. We have high pressure in place, which will make it very sunny for south and central, just a little bit of cloud cover for the north. And on Christmas Eve, that is the next best chance. We'll see winds start to pick up into the 30 to 40 range through many parts of the province. The far north could see those pick up close to 50 at times. And that is when we're also going to see a bit of a warm-up, too. Another ridge starting to develop in our jet stream here. These deep purples that you see up in the kind of top of your screen there, they should be further down toward us this time of year, but we're still dealing with these yellows and greens and even kind of light blues. Quite unusual, and what that means is that over these next few days, temperatures really don't go anywhere. We're all just either right above or right below the freezing mark. For Christmas Day, that's pretty darn nice, -2. And if you celebrate Kwanzaa, which begins on Tuesday, it'll be a wonderful start to that, as well as temperatures will be above the freezing mark. For Saskatoon, again, normal this time of year, -9. Nowhere near that over the next few days here. A little bit gusty as we head into Saturday, but then temperatures returning to near freezing conditions in the overnight lows, near -5. So yes, the start of winter, I think, maybe should be pushed back a month here, Sam.
That is the saddest slight chance of snow I've ever seen.
It's just so tiny.
So tiny. Thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
Well, these tiny Parisians got some time enjoying some yoga while also getting trampled by cuteness. But these sessions by Puppy Yoga Paris are not limited to puppies. This week, it is golden retrievers. There are also classes featuring other breeds and even kittens. How fun. We'll be back after the break. The provincial government has had a news-making year, to say the least. As part of a series of year-end interviews, our Adam Hunter sat down with political leaders to look back and forward. Here's an excerpt with Premier Scott Moe.
There's a lot of pressures, obviously, and you hear, every day in here when the sitting is in about spending more money on education. You've had to put money in during the year for that with increased enrollment. Healthcare is another thing that's a pressure for the government. A lot of this comes down to population and having newcomers in the province and people moving into the province, which is something you're pushing for. Where are the pressures in healthcare right now, and what are some of the priorities for you as far as tackling that? Because we've heard about issues with ambulance service. I know you've addressed that recently. In Saskatoon, there's issues with retaining healthcare workers like nurses and doctors. What's in store for next year as far as the government's plans to address some of these healthcare concerns?
Well, I'd say first and foremost is the government is focused on outcomes, and that's why you've seen in the short term some investments that are going to provide outcomes in a much shorter order than if we traditionally looked at doing things the way we should. I point towards some of the mammography and biopsy scans that we had purchased from a private vendor in Calgary. Some of the what you'll see is some of the orthopedic surgeries happening in a private clinic but publicly funded in the very near future, which will open up some capacity in our public operational theaters as well. So the first is we need to focus on what the outcomes are from the patient's perspective. The second is we need people, like every other province across Canada, and we're working very hard through our Health Human Resource Plan, and very focused on that plan on adding people to the system, like every other province is. And we've hired over 800 new grads, 400 international grads added to that, nursing grads into our system, but it's still not enough, and we're still adding that human resource to our facilities across the province, and we need to have some more. And then the third thing I would say is we always need to be open up and down the system, from government right to the very front lines, to listening, collaborating, and innovating, and where there's opportunities to offer services in a little different way. We need to be open to that. And so I would point to the changing discussion year by year around mental health and all too often subsequent addictions, and the investment that we're making starting in Saskatoon and Regina with our urgent care centers, primarily focused on relieving some of the pressures that we have in our emergency rooms in our largest centers. But there's the secondary, or I would say parallel intake that is in there, or in those facilities, that is about providing that catch-all intake for folks that may be having a mental health crisis or have unfortunately entered a life of addictions and are ready to make a change. To enter an emergency room and to be told that you can come back next Thursday for a detox bed. That just doesn't work. We need to take those people by the hand and get them in front of the medical health professional that they need. And so being somewhat innovative in how we are looking at the delivery of healthcare, I think is imperative as we look ahead. And nowhere better to start than as we build out capacity in that mental health and addictions recovery space.
What do you make of, I talked about some of the controversy around the parental rights bill, and we also had, pretty, noteworthy protest here at the legislature. There was some that spilled out into the hallways, and then, a few days later, with some allegations from your side and the opposition kind of trading shots. There's kind of been a few divisive issues this year that have got a lot of attention. What do you make of that? Do you think that's healthy? Do you think that's something that needs to be reined in? What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's healthy. And what happened here in the legislature, we have protests all the time out front. And what happened here that actually shut down government operations for a period of time was a protest actually proceeded into the legislative chambers. There's questions around, what involvement the opposition, some of the opposition MLAs may or may not have had in organizing that, moving into the chambers and in an unprecedented way shutting down the operations of government. None of that is healthy. But I think it does does speak to some of the uncertainty that we are seeing globally. We have still today, a Russian invasion of Ukraine that is happening before our very eyes and moving the lines of democracy in Eastern Europe. We have, a Canadian government that has, very much, I think, lessened the degree of relationship that we have with the world's largest economy in India. We have what is happening with the terrorist invasion of Hamas into Israel, and the consequences that have arose in light of that initial invasion. And I think we see some of that, and we should understand that Saskatchewan is not only global in our economic touch, providing those products to so many countries around the world, but by having the population growth and the immigration that we've experienced over the last 10 to 15 years, we very much are global in our family connections as well. And so we need to be understanding, I think, of all of that, each of us. And at this point of the year, going into the Christmas season, I think it is incumbent for us as individuals, yes, as governments of various levels, but as individuals to really pay attention to what are we doing to bring blessings to others? What are we doing in providing that that positive comment to someone that maybe we just haven't got along with that well the last 3 or 4 months? And what are we doing in lending a little bit of time to our communities, to our friends, and to our family members when they most need it? Generosity and acceptance starts at home. It starts with individuals, and it spreads as quickly as divisiveness can. And maybe this is a time of year for each of us to remember that, including myself.
What makes you reflect on that? What makes you think that that's something that should be a focus going into next year? It's
the Saskatchewan and Canadian way. We are generous as individuals, and traditionally we have been very generous in our relationships and how we form relationships and how we foster relationships as Canadians, both within our nation and around the world. And challenging years, the last few years behind us, but we should always remember we are a part of a family. We are a part of a friend group. We're part of a community. We're part of a province, and we're part of a nation. And I think it's a great nation. And I think that all starts at home. It starts with me. It starts with you, Adam, and it starts with each of our listeners. And this, heading into this festive season, hopefully people have the opportunity to regroup and spend some time with those that are most important to them in their life, that we can just maybe reflect on that a little bit.
And Ethan's back with one last look at your weather.
And there is the possibility we could see some fog overnight in Regina. That should be clearing out, though, by the morning. -7 at 8 a.m., and that should be fully gone by the noon hour. Lots of sunshine tomorrow as well. We're near freezing. Saskatoon, same thing for you. You may be waking up with a little bit of that fog, but even less cloud cover in your neck of the woods, around -8. Pretty much identical forecast to Regina. We're on our way to getting above the freezing mark in Saskatoon as well. And of course, today is the winter solstice. You might notice the sun rays a little lower on the horizon out there. This is when we get the least direct sunlight. And winter actually begins in, well, just about under 3 hours from now, and it will be the longest night, 16 hours of darkness for a lot of us. But of course, the good news, Sam, just gets brighter from here.
I really thought that was going to be a Santa map. I'm trying to mask my disappointment.
In a few days.
Thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
And that is it for us tonight. For News Anytime, you can head to our website. You can subscribe to the CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel, or download the CBC News app on your phone or tablet. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.